The Bread and Better podcast acknowledges the Yagara people and the Turrbal people as the traditional custodians of Meanjin, the lands on which we record today. We pay our respects to the Yagara and Turrbal elders, past, present and emerging. This podcast is brought to you by Hey Al Productions.
Did I say good? Did I get you to do it one more time? Maybe just in case. Okay, do it one more time. Go. Bread and Better podcast.
Okay. Bread and Better podcast. I feel like I am. Bread and Better podcast. Welcome back to Bread and Better, your weekly dose of casual convo about all the things that affect us as women.
Here at Bread and Better, we believe that better begins with us. Our values are rooted in helping our listeners and ourselves become the best version we can be by addressing our health in all areas, from physical to mental and emotional, and today, financial.
I'm Alex, coffee enthusiast, creative, and mum of 3 little legends. One of the many hats I wear is producer of this podcast and others via my business, Hey Al Productions.
And I'm Tegan, a personal coach with an online business called Fitty Tegs. I'm a foodie, a beach bum, and I love talking about personal development.
We are very excited to dive into today's episode with our expert guest talking about finances and what we can do to start to get ahead in this area of life.
Segment to kick off the podcast. The best thing that you ate in the last week, Alex. You've got the same one.
No, well, yes, but I just remembered when we were recording the last episode, which is next week's episode, which was really funny. I found the other day dairy-free, triple butter, gluten-free microwave popcorn.
You didn't think of that when we were talking about popcorn before?
Well, I did, and I say in that episode, I'm like, oh my God, I just thought, yes, I was saving it.
So it's like an Olivani nutter-like situation.
Yeah.
Or it's butter flavoured.
It's butter flavoured.
Nice.
And it was so yummy. I can't remember the brand right now, but I'll post a photo. I will remember. If I don't remember, DM me if you need it. But oh my Lord, so yummy and so exciting.
Would you say it slaps?
It slaps, yeah. So we were watching a movie and I had that popcorn and I had some of my dairy-free Nomo, like rum and raisin chocolate, and I felt like a normal person. I was like, look at me.
Look at me with my
chocolate and
chocolate and watching a movie.
Yeah, it made me so happy.
I love that for you.
So maybe this is something that also came up in that other episode. I think next time I go to the movies, I'll pop that and hide it in my handbag.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have to hide things now. I think you can just stroll on in.
Maybe a box of popcorn. Might be a bit pushing a bit.
I take my bag of popcorn.
But that's a small bag.
No, I take one of the big ones.
Do you take the big bag? Yeah. Of course you do.
Yeah. Still less calories than a small popcorn. Just going to add that in there.
Oh, okay.
It's my turn?
Yeah, your turn.
We went for a nice dinner at Glenelg Public House on Sunday night.
Answer.
Which is, a nice steak restaurant on the coast, and had like oysters and arancini and then a steak and mashed potato and a really, really nice glass of red.
Yeah.
It's a really nice meal.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah, it was great. I had like a rib fillet and it had like a blue cheese sauce. Yum.
That sounds so good.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I miss blue cheese sauce.
Yeah, do they do a blue cheese
They do a vegan blue cheese.
Substitute?
Yeah, it's not as good, but it's not bad.
Yeah, right.
I should do that. I should make steak on the weekend and do a blue cheese sauce.
Yeah, with some lactose-free cream.
Dairy-free.
Dairy-free cream.
Yeah. There's a lot of options for that now.
Good. I'm glad.
Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into the episode.
On today's episode, we are very excited to be joined by Deline. Deline is a financial planner with a business called Mazi Wealth. We read on the website that the word Mazi means together in Greek. At Mazi Wealth, they work together with you to design your best life. We love this, and it's so aligned with our values here on the podcast. We know that finances are such a big part of people's lives and ability to enjoy their lives. So we can't wait to get into today's episode. Welcome to the podcast, Deline.
Thank you so much for having me. And I was so excited that you wanted me on because I am a big believer in holistic well-being, and I guess financial well-being is a big part of that. So I was really excited when you wanted to have me on. I do need to just give a quick disclaimer before we go into too much information. So any information or advice I give in the podcast today is general advice. So it's not tailored to anyone's personal circumstances. I'm obviously talking to a large audience here on the podcast. So you just need to think about if you implement or take any of this advice, whether it's appropriate for your circumstances. So yeah, I'll maybe give you the full disclaimer to put into your show notes.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Definitely, yeah, we can do that.
That's great.
So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. This is definitely something that I'm really interested in and something that I talk about a lot with my friends. We're always talking about money, and I feel like getting into our 30s now and getting to the point where we're financially stable, which is fantastic, but now we're thinking about how do we get ahead. We loved the list of topics that you sent through, as I was just saying off air, and there's so much in there that we wanted to get into, so we want to try and con you into a second episode because we know that our listeners are just going to get so much from this conversation.
Yeah, I'd love to come back on. There's, like I had mentioned before, when we were setting up this episode, I could talk about this for hours on end, so happy to come back and do a bit more of an advanced topic as well if you like, so no problem.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Definitely.
Okay, so to start the conversation about money today, we'd love you to go through some of the most common mistakes we might be making when it comes to our money.
Yeah, I think some of the biggest mistakes I see people make is not having a spending plan in place. So that's also known as a budget. I know that gets such a bad rap, that name or that word, but it really is crucial for any financial plan, whether it's a plan that you're doing yourself or getting done with an advisor. And then linking to that is living beyond your means, which means that you can end up with debt or lifestyle creep, which means you're not able to get ahead. Other common mistakes is not having a plan B in place, so not having emergency funds, having the right insurances in place, no estate plan to direct where you want your money to go in the event something happens to you. And other mistakes is neglecting your superannuation. So for the majority of people, their super is their biggest asset outside of their home. So it is really important that we do put some focus and emphasis on it. And the last mistake I'll want to point out is that people sometimes wait for the perfect time or environment to start investing in their future. So it's never too late to start, but the earlier we start, the better. So that's probably the last common mistake I see.
Yeah. So interesting. Can I just be so honest? And if there's people that are listening so they don't feel too bad, I don't have any super.
That's common for self-employed people.
Okay. Yeah. And also because I've been a stay-at-home mum for the last 10 years and I've been a freelance writer.
Yes.
So, and I haven't but I guess Kev has super, like my husband.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't have any. So.
Yeah. It often happens with self-employed people. Superannuation has so many tax benefits. So that's why financial advisors love it so much.
Yeah.
And so, if we can get you started on that, that's awesome. But superannuation is just one vehicle to save for your retirement. It's not the only way. So you could have other types of investments that help you support your retirement and your, financial independence and work optional journeys. So it's not the only way. But it is common for self-employed people because when there's the choice between putting food on the table versus putting away for your future, it is a bit of a challenge.
Yeah. Oh, that makes me feel so much better. It's not just me.
No.
And I think we find that there's a lot of Australians that took out of their super when they were able to with COVID, right?
Absolutely,
It wasn't a good choice, but maybe something that people had to do.
And and that comes down to, we're going to talk about emergency funds a little bit later on, and COVID was a great example of that. Well, not great, but an example where people did not have the right plan B in place, and then they might have lost hours or lost jobs and then had no backup plan, nothing to live on. And so then they had to take out money from their investments, which is like their superannuation, or other people ended up in debt. So I've seen people ending up in credit card debt because they didn't have the income or a backup cushioning in place. So it is really important to have that in place so we're not in crisis mode and creating strain in the future.
Yeah. So we're going to get into that, shortly. So I shared on a recent episode that we just did that having a budget was one of my biggest tips for being organised with your money. So we did an organisation episode, and I was just telling you off air that my mum's an accountant, and I can thank her for helping me with this. But can you talk to us more about budgeting and cash flow and your tips for this?
Yeah. Cash flow or spending plans or budgets, whatever you want to call it, they're the foundation for any financial plan. So whether, like I said, you're doing it yourself or you've got a financial advisor. So even if you've got an advisor helping you, we still are not there to tell you what you're going to eat every single day. And so we're not going to be telling you exactly what to spend your money on. Yeah. We'll help you understand the pros and cons and the consequences of your actions. But I guess any financial advisor can help you put together a great plan, but they're not going to be there day in and day out to, smack the credit card out of your hand. So it's all the stuff that you do day in and day out that's going to help whether your plan comes to fruition or whether you get off track with that plan. So it is a foundation before you can do anything else. And if you don't have a spending plan or a budget, I guess you don't know where your money is going. That's when you can start ending up in debt and start ending up with a credit card debt. You might be using buy now, pay later to fund your lifestyle. And if you don't have a spending plan, then how are you going to create a surplus in order to invest in your future so that you can retire one day or be financially independent or work optional? How will you be able to?
Yeah.
How will you be able to, save to go on a holiday or put your kids through private schooling if that's important to you, or, purchase a home, pay off your mortgage, all those sorts of things. So it is really important to have that cash flow plan in place. And there's, I guess, a number of steps involved with creating a cash flow plan. So first of all, you need to know what's coming in and then what's coming out of the accounts. So in terms of what's coming in, if you're an employee, that's quite simple because you can just grab your pay slip, you know what you're getting paid each fortnight or month. Even if you're a variable type employee like casual, or you do different overtimes or get allowances and things like that, it's a bit more consistent. When you're self-employed, it's a little bit harder. So as a self-employed person, you might take, a year before you really get a grasp on what your income is going to be moving forward. But yeah, sitting down, working out what your income is really important. And then you need to work out what's coming out of the household. So that's sitting there looking at all your, your mortgage, your debts, fixed expenses, your variable expenses, and then also making sure you incorporate some fun money in there, because otherwise it's not going to be realistic. You won't be able to stick to the plan. It would kind of be like, having a really strict diet and not having any sort of cheat meals incorporated in there. Yeah. Then you're more likely to blow out. And then once you've worked out what's coming in and what's going out, ideally we want to see that there's a surplus in the money, and then you can direct what you want to do with that surplus, whether it's to pay down further debt, invest it in your future, super contributions, or saving towards another lifestyle goal. If you're in a deficit, which means your expenses are more than your income, then we've got a bit of a problem. We need to kind of think about where are we going to fund that shortfall from? So do you have some savings that you're going to be living on? So sometimes it's a season in life. You might be in a period where you're starting up a business or you've had children or something like that, and it's just a season in life, and you might be spending down from your savings, but long term it's not sustainable. So you do need to make sure that there is a plan in place that at some point you will be increasing your income or decreasing the expenses to make sure that you're not going backwards consistently.
Yeah.
Do you find that people not being realistic with their social or fun money is the main cause of people not being able to stick to their budget?
Yeah, absolutely. And people not planning ahead for things like big future expenses like a car, for example. So they might forget that they need to upgrade their car at some point. They're not going to last forever. And just changes in circumstances. You need to really be flexible with your finances, because if you think back at the last 5 years in your life, how many changes you've had. For me, in the last 5 years, I've had a second child, I've started my business. There's been so many changes. So I'm sure most of your listeners can think back about the last 5-10 years, how much has changed in their life. So that's why you've got to be quite flexible and agile, and being able to pivot quite easily is really important.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And do you have any advice around bank account structure or any suggestions?
Yeah. So that is a common mistake I sometimes see people make as well, where they might have not enough bank accounts to facilitate their budget, or they've got too many bank accounts. A book that is quite popular out there in the personal finance world is The Barefoot Investor. So some of your audience might have read his book before. I'm a big fan of it in general. There's some things that I'm not a fan of, but overall I like his message and what he's trying to do. And a lot of people that come to me for advice have often started out with the barefoot investor style of approach with the bank accounts. Some people do take it to the next level where they've got like 15 bank accounts, and then sometimes it can be really hard to manage where everything is, like what you're saving up for. So I'd say for the majority of people, 3 to 6 bank accounts is usually enough. I say 3 to 6 because everyone is different. There's actually not a one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to finances. And I guess it's a little bit like your, workout plans, whether you're going to work out in the morning or the evening or what type of workout. Like everyone's going to have different preferences, and that's the same with your spending plan. So as a general rule, you want to make sure you've got a cash hub. That's where all your income goes into, and that's where all your direct debits come out of. Then you want to have another account where you have a weekly amount going into, and that's for your food, fuel and fun generally. Yeah. Now, some people like to have 2 accounts for the variable type stuff. They might have their like food and fuel coming out of one account and then have a separate account purely for the fun stuff if they need that extra discipline. And if you're part of a couple, you might have a fun account each. So that way you can spend without having to answer to your partner.
Oh,
that's smart.
That's so smart.
It does depend on your relationship though.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So like for me and my husband, we find that's too many accounts for us. So we just have the one account that we both spend from because we're both kind of on the same page when it comes to spending. Mm-hmm. So hasn't always been that way, I should say. It's been a journey like everybody else to get to this point. And then the idea is that by separating that amount weekly and giving it to yourself weekly, it's easier to manage money on a weekly basis because it's a shorter time frame. So even if you're getting paid monthly, if you're paying yourself an amount weekly to spend, it's easier to manage rather than that whole month. And then when you have your annual bills coming up, you should already have the money set aside in your cash hub because it's been accumulating over the year in that cash hub because you're not spending it all. You're just spending what's coming into your weekly spending account, food, fuel, fun. I used to call it a shoes and booze account, but I changed the name because not everyone has booze these days and not everyone likes shoes. So
like that.
So that's somewhere between, 2 to 3 accounts there.
Yeah.
Then you'll want to have a separate account for your emergency funds. So you want to keep that separate from your day-to-day spending so that you're not tempted to spend from it. So having that in a separate account. And then you might have some other accounts set up for some other lifestyle goals that you're saving for. So, for example, if you're saving for a home, you might have a bank account for your home deposit, or if it's for a holiday, you might have that going into a separate account. So that's why you need to be kind of flexible and think about what your personal goals and objectives are and then working out the accounts that are right. But as a general rule, we just want to separate our fixed bills from our variable type expenses so that we've got money for our bills when the time comes.
Yeah. Oh, that's such good tangible advice.
Yeah.
I have like 3, but now I'm like, I'm going to go change this as soon as
I think I have 7 or 8.
Yeah.
But 2 of those are business related ones. But I've got I pay myself into one, and then I have a bills, and then I have a saving for something fun. And then I, like you were saying, like I have my shoes and booze where I just put in what I spend on my card.
Yeah.
So mine's kind of set up. I can see ways that I can improve. But
mine's a bit similar, but I
sort
don't
of on
have
the
an
right
emergency
track.
fund. I need that.
And you're right with when you are self-employed, you'll generally have more business accounts as well because your business kind of needs to have its own emergency fund almost, its own cash buffer in there. And you might have another account in your business set aside for your tax or potentially super. So like my business, I've got 3 accounts in there, and then personal, we've got a number of accounts that between me and my husband trying to manage that as well. So it's kind of like running 2 budgets almost.
Right.
Do some people just have the one account and they just run everything off one account?
Wow.
Yeah.
I could not. That's a lot of like mental work.
Yeah. But then I see people that have like 15 accounts and they save like their rego in one account and like everything is very separate. And I just think, well, that's like way too many accounts to try and manage.
That's a lot. Like I see why they would, but Yeah, that's way too much. What is your advice for someone who has created a budget and feels as though they are living above or outside of their means or don't have any money left to save? I'm sure that some people avoid doing a budget because they feel overwhelmed or hopeless about their financial situation.
Yeah, that is really common. The first step is awareness when it comes to a budget or spending plan. So you can't improve if you don't know where you are at the moment. So there's a lot of overlaps between finance and health and fitness. So an example would be that you might need to just like track your calories for a week to see where you're going wrong potentially, like keeping a food diary. And it could be the same with your personal expenses. You just need to like be realistic with yourself because you can't improve unless you have that awareness. So in general, though, there's two main levers you can pull if you're living beyond your means. So number one is you can increase your income, or number two is decrease expenses. Now, decreasing expenses, you can only do that so far, but there could be a lot of leakages in your spending plan that you could, tighten up for a period of time. It doesn't have to be forever, but, at the moment there is, the cost of living has, increased for a lot of people. So we've had mortgage rates go up like 50% over a year. And then just like all your bills, if you have a look at your groceries, your energy, everything is just increased so much over the last year and a half. So there's only so far you can cut back your bills and expenses. So then the other thing is increasing your income. So this is looking at ways whether you can, do some further study to get a promotion, or whether it's, you've been in a job for a while and you want to take on more responsibility, whether it's looking at like side hustles or other side incomes. There's different ways of going about it. And I did mention earlier on that sometimes you might just be in a season of life. So you need to kind of accept that as well. So what I mean by that is if you've got small children, it might not be that realistic to go get a second job or start a side hustle or something like that. And you might be working, you might have chosen as a family to work less because your kids are small. Sometimes you just need to accept that and just know that at some point in time, though, there's going to be a plan to increase the income or decrease expenses with like childcare expenses, for example, when they start school. And then that way you can hopefully create a surplus to then direct that into your future. They're kind of the main two things. And the other, I guess, lever is kind of delaying goals. So you can have everything you want in the world, but not everything at once. So sometimes we need to prioritize what's the most important thing right now and what can be delayed to achieve in a future period of time.
Yeah. Oh my God.
As you talk, I'm like, say to my clients.
As you talk, I'm like, this is so aligned with like your reference to health and fitness stuff. And just like everything is so aligned with us.
Well, I teach flexible dieting with my clients, and it's essentially a budget for calories.
Yes,
and I say,
absolutely.
Like one of my favorite sentences is, you can have whatever you want, but you probably can't have it in the same day.
Yeah.
So it's like almost the same sentence.
Yeah, 100%.
This is so good.
But it's so similar. It's the same when I'm teaching my clients to, like, they're getting a calorie budget and they're going to have to learn like how to get the things that they need, which is like the key pillars and then the fun things.
Yeah. Like, do you think I want to eat an egg white omelette every day? But no, but I do that because I want to make room for the fun stuff as well. It's all balancing it out.
And I love the way you've just put it about having small kids, because that is so true, and sometimes you can really get bogged down in that and feel a bit sad about your situation. But
100%.
Thinking that you're just delaying your goals and it will change eventually.
I spoke to a lady yesterday who has recently separated from a partner, and she's got two kids, one still in childcare, the other's in school, and she's been working part-time, and she said, I know I need to go increase my income again. And she was earning like over $200,000 before she had kids, and now she's earning a lot less than that. She's still on a good income, but she said like she knows now is the time, now that she's separated, she's the sole income earner for her family. She's got the kids the majority of the time. Now she knows 6 months' time, youngest will be in school. Going to free up expenses, and then she's got the opportunity to increase her work as well. So sometimes it's just around, that time of life. And if you start a business, as you know, it takes a while to get that, up and running. So it just sometimes is a season in life, and not to always be so hard on yourself.
Yeah, I think that's such a good reminder, and that's kind of like a similar situation that not that I had kids, but I took this new rental with partner. It's quite expensive. We split up, and it's like
Yeah,
kind of like
right.
recognizing that that's a big chunk of
Yes.
savings for the time that I have that lease. But that's okay because it's just a season,
Yeah,
and I'll be
absolutely.
able to save more
Yeah.
down the track when
Yeah.
that circumstance changes again. And that was probably really timely because I'm always like, need to be making more money, need to hustle harder, like need to get ahead. But it's like you will do those things.
Yeah. I promise you, every single client I ever see over the last 16 years has always said, I should be further ahead, or I should be doing more. Like everyone always thinks they could be doing so much better, and myself included. Like I'm a financial advisor, I've been doing this, like I said, for a long time, and I still always think, oh, we could be doing better. We should be doing, but it's also like money is just a tool to live life. So you don't want to be hoarding all this money for your grave. Like you want to make sure you're enjoying life and having a good life now too. So it is a balancing act. And I guess that comes down to like, food and exercise as well. Like you don't want to, yes, you want to enjoy the good food, but you just can't do it all the time every day. You can't be spending all your money or spending all your calories every day, because then that's when the negative stuff happens. Yeah.
And you think of the inverse of that too, those people that are like, I'm going to work so insanely hard and then I'm going to put my feet up in retirement, but they work, 12-hour days, 7 days a week, and they burn out, and then they don't have their health when they retire, but they've got all this money and they can't enjoy it.
I see that all the time too. Yeah. So it's definitely a balancing act.
Yeah. Can you tell us about emergency funds? What are they? Why do we need one? And how to go about beginning to create one? Should this be our first priority when we're looking to, save money or do something with that surplus?
So in short, yes, it's your first thing you should be doing. An emergency fund is essentially a rainy day fund. So you've got some money set aside so that if any sort of crisis happens, whether it is you lose your job, whether there's a medical emergency, whether there's an unexpected bill, you're not having to go into debt to fund that. So you want to make sure there's a bit of a cushion in place. And the whole point of an emergency fund is, avoid debt, give you some financial stability, and then also give you some peace of mind as well. They're the kind of main reasons why we would have an emergency fund. In terms of how much you should have, this is a really personal decision, I guess. Everyone's different. So at the end of the day, it's going to be whatever helps you sleep at night. But as a general rule, most people will say somewhere between like minimum 3 months of expenses. So this is why you need to know what your expenses are and have that cash flow plan. So you know what your expenses are, so you can work out what your emergency fund needs to be. So 3 months is a minimum. If you can have 3 to 6 months, even better. But you might have more if you have other risk factors, I guess. So if you have dependent people on you, so dependent children, you might choose to have a more healthier emergency fund. If you are self-employed and your income is variable, you might choose to have more of a buffer. If you've got like investment properties, sometimes you might choose to have a bigger emergency fund as well, just in case you lose a tenant for a period of time. So it really does come down to like your individual circumstances. Some people think 3 months is a lot, and yes, it is, and it can take a while to build up, but that should really be the first goal, and doing everything in your power to get to that first goal. So look around the house. Is there anything that you can sell on Marketplace?
Yeah.
Do you take on a second job for a short period of time and just funnel everything into that emergency fund? We just don't want to be going into debt and having financial strain if there was any sort of emergency or unexpected expense.
Yeah.
COVID is an example, like we spoke about before. People lost their jobs or had their hours cut. And you really need to make sure that money, that emergency fund, is sitting in cash in like a bank account. You don't want that locked up in like other investments like shares or ETFs or anything like that, because if the market drops at the same time as you needing to access that money, which is what happened in COVID, that money has dropped in value. It's not worth what you put in potentially, and that means you're having to sell something at a loss and you don't have all the money there that you need. So it's really important it's in cash. If you've got an offset account on your mortgage, that's usually a great place to hold it. But if you don't, just a high interest account, and at least we're getting some decent interest on our savings these days. It's not like a few years ago where we're getting no interest. At least we're getting some interest these days.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah. All right. I can't wait to listen to this again. I'm going to take so many notes. I'm like, I should check emergency fund. All right. Can you talk to us more about how we can erase our debt and what we should prioritise in regard to this?
Okay, generally speaking, there's 3 types of debts. There's good debt, bad debt, and then okay or neutral type debt. So good debt is debt that is considered an investment into your future. So it could include borrowing money to invest in assets like property or shares. It could be also borrowing money to invest in a business. And good debt typically has the potential to increase your net worth or generate income. Now, bad debt is generally high interest debts. It includes things like credit cards, Afterpay and buy now, pay later, and other personal loans. It might even include car loans. So car loans are a bit of a tricky one. It could be bad debt or it could be neutral, okay debt. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. But the reason these types of debts are considered bad is because they usually are high interest. They're usually taken out to purchase depreciating assets or assets for kind of like everyday purchases or consumption. So if you think about Afterpay, you're usually taking out that borrowing to buy clothes and, like stuff that's not going to increase your net worth or help you become financially independent or work optional in the future. So it doesn't contribute to your financial growth. And then the last type of debt is okay or neutral debt. So it's somewhere in between good and bad debt, kind of depends on how you use it. So it's usually things like your HECS or your student loans. So some people think that's bad debt. Some people think it's good debt. That's why I kind of categorize it as a neutral thing, because it can help you get a better job and help you increase your earning potential in the future. But for some people, if they study something that doesn't really help them, then that may be considered a bad debt. It's usually been considered okay in terms of the interest rate. It's usually gone up with indexation. The last couple of years have been a bit tricky because inflation has been quite high, which meant the HECS loans had increased a fair bit. That's kind of been rectified more recently. I won't go into too much detail, but reach out if you want to understand that more. And things like car loans. So the reason I say they could be bad or they could be a neutral debt, most people need a car to get to work to be able to generate an income. So that's why I'm okay with people having a car debt if they have no other option. Like if the option is you have no savings but you need a car to get to work, then we need to get a car loan. That's our only option. The reason they're sometimes bad is because generally if we are borrowing money to buy a car, we're usually spending more than what we would have if we just used cash to buy that car. Because a lot of people would just look at the repayments on that loan rather than considering the whole debt and the interest rate on it. So that one's a bit tricky. Yeah. And the other okay or neutral debt is your home loan. Most people are not going to be able to save up to purchase a home in cash. So unless you receive an inheritance or win lotto or something, most people have to take out a home loan to be able to purchase a home. So that's why that's sort of a neutral debt as well. Yeah. So now that we know about those 3 different types of debts, I guess the focus should really be around making sure we don't get into those bad debts. So don't, build up Afterpay debts and personal loans, credit cards. If you're building up that kind of debt, it means, or that indicates to me that you're spending more than you're earning. And that's why you need to go back to that cash flow plan to see how you can improve it. Can you decrease expenses, increase your income? What can you do to improve that? We really want to make sure we're clearing those bad debts as a first priority, because if you're paying high interest on a debt, there's no point investing in your future. So investing in shares, ETFs, investment properties, anything like that, because you would actually need to earn a really high rate of return on those investments to make it worthwhile compared to just paying down that debt. So as an example, you might be paying 10% on your car loan or credit card or whatever it is. You would have to earn 14 or 15% on an investment to get that same net return once, because you get taxed on your investment income. So you need to earn a lot higher once the tax is taken out to get that same net outcome. So it's just a drain on your cash flow. That's why you just want to clear those debts as much as possible and make sure you're living in a surplus or at least neutrally as much as possible, unless there was a plan to take some time out of the workforce and live on savings or whatever it is. Yeah.
So how should people prioritise their debt repayments?
Yeah, the first step would be to sit down and write down all your loans, write down what the balance is, your interest rates, what your minimum repayments are for each of those loans. And then there's generally two types of debt repayment strategies you can come up with. There is something called the snowball method, which basically means you start off with the smallest loan first, and just continue making the minimum repayments on everything else, but you smash down that smallest loan. And once that one is cleared, then you move on to the next smallest loan and you keep going, and that kind of creates a snowball effect. The other way is what we call the avalanche method, which means that you start off with the highest interest rate first. So it really comes down to the psychological factors. So if you're somebody who gets, I guess, achievement out of ticking off, like if you can tick something off and it makes you feel good, that's me too. Then those little tasks in the day, just ticking off those little things makes you feel good. Then you might go with the snowball method. But if you're really focused on what does the numbers say, then you might focus on the highest interest rate first and clearing that regardless of the size of the loan.
Yeah. Would it be a good move for people, say they have Afterpay, a personal loan, a car loan, a credit card?
Yeah.
Would it be a good idea to consolidate them into one loan and then pay it off that way, or would they be better off picking one at a time?
It's a good question. It depends. As always, it depends. Sometimes when you consolidate loans, it can actually end up increasing the amount you end up paying over the longer term. So sometimes I've seen people consolidate those loans into their mortgage. They end up paying more interest over the long term because they're taking longer to pay it off, compared to if they just smashed it down individually. It also comes down to what the banks or financial institutions will allow. So if you've got a lot of debts, you might not even be able to take out another debt to consolidate, depending on your credit score and things like that.
Yeah.
So it depends.
When I was younger, I was bad with money, and I had at one point car loan, credit card, Afterpay, and I ended up consolidating them.
Yeah.
And I just had a quicker repayment.
Yeah. Because you had a plan to pay it down quickly.
Yeah, because I just wanted to get rid of it, and it was one thing
instead
to
of
pay
lots
off,
of
but I didn't know if that was the right thing, but that seemed the most manageable thing for me to do at the time because it was
definitely
just one thing.
Yeah, and definitely. I've seen people as well, they might do a zero interest balance transfer onto a credit card. So some credit cards let you transfer your balance. Say you've got $10,000 on a credit card that you owe. You can transfer it onto a new card with zero interest, and that could be for 12 months or 24 months or something like that. So you might do that, but you really need to make sure that you've got the right mindset to focus and clear that within that time frame and be committed to not spending any more on credit cards. So you need to cut up those credit cards or keep it at home, in a drawer somewhere, not have it with you, so that you can really stick to that plan. So money is very much a mindset thing. And I was listening to one of your episodes recently around personal development. There was that episode, and there was also one around mindset. So I'm really into those kinds of episodes. And they all relate so much to financial advice. So if you're listening and you haven't listened to those episodes, you should go listen to them.
I was going to say the same Tegan that got me out of that mess is not the same Tegan that got me into that mess. I just had, and I've had to do a lot of work on my money mindset.
Yes.
And I think that there's so much to do with my personal development that's gotten me into a lot better of a financial place. But it's also wild how much money you can lend as a really young person. I got a brand new RAV4 loan when I was 22 years old, and I already had a credit card and a personal loan. And I was I got myself into a bit of shit.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't even have a credit card now.
Yeah.
I just would, maybe I'll have to. Do you have to have one?
No, not necessarily. I have one. So we put our fixed expenses on there, but we try to just have our variable expenses coming out of our weekly account. But for
Is it for a points benefit?
That's why. So I would prefer not to have it, but I've got to meet my husband somewhere.
Yeah.
He really loves cycling the credit cards to get the points, but I'm just going to put a big warning out there that you've got to have a lot of discipline to know how to play that game.
Yeah.
And my husband's actually an accountant, so we've got two finance people in the household.
Yes.
But you need to remember that the banks do that kind of stuff because they're the ones winning at the end of the day. So most people will usually get it wrong and the banks will win. So they're not doing that to be generous and give you free money.
I think my discipline with regards to money is like so much better, but then there's just some element of myself that I'm like, I don't trust myself. I just don't want to. It's just easier to not. I'm creating resistance.
And the mindset thing, like the better your mindset gets around money, the easier it gets to not bury your head in the sand, if that makes sense. So like it is a bit of like you've just got to start and then it will get easier. And then your mindset will get better.
You really do have to pull your head out of the sand.
It's definitely a journey. It's not like you just wake up one day and you go to the gym and deadlift 80 kilos or 100 kilos. Like it's the same with your money. You're not going to just wake up and have, $50,000 in the bank. Like you've got to consistently work at it, and those 1%ers, like consistently every day, what are you doing day in, day out to improve your financial situation? And it's not around being like tight or not, you're going without. It's just around like having that balance and consistently showing up for yourself.
And do you think like really prioritizing spending your money on things that you value?
Absolutely.
Like, for people that do feel like that there's not a lot to spend. And I was having a conversation with my girlfriend last night about it because I was really excited about the episode today. And she'd listened to another podcast and he was talking about like spending your money on things that you value. And I said at the moment, like, because I am like on a reasonably tight budget, I said I haven't bought anything shopping wise in a really long time, but I eat out. That's how I spend my money. But I'm really happy with that because that's something that I really value. And she was kind of reflecting on, little random purchases. She's like, this doesn't bring me joy. Like, I don't value this. And seeing that she could tighten up in that way.
Absolutely. So it's usually like stuff that doesn't actually bring you any value and joy to your life. You'll forget about it. So if you do like want to buy something, just put it in the shopping cart and just walk away, leave it there for a week and then come back. You probably won't even want it anymore.
Do what I did and incentivize yourself. Like I want to get a new surfboard, but I was like, I just didn't want to go and buy. I wanted to make myself kind of earn it. So I went and just started finding what I could sell around the house on Facebook Marketplace. And I found like $700 in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
It's insane. Like the things you have around that you're not
Definitely. And I think, like going back to that seasonal kind of spending, if, you might have somebody that getting personal training and like that might not be something that you do forever, but you might spend money on that for a while because you really want to prioritize your health and your fitness.
Get you started.
Yeah, that's right. And just want that extra accountability. It's the same with financial advice. Like people come in and out of my world because they might want to get some extra accountability, get some additional advice and help, but then they might drop off and then come back in a few years' time when they feel like they need that extra support. So it's the same with like, the personal training or, dietitian or something like that. And going back to like the value stuff, just something like in my personal experience before kids, used to love eating out, very like that was a thing of mine, but since having kids, like it's not worth it. It's just, I don't enjoy it. So we're not like eating out as much.
So true. Take away when they're
totally
in bed
different experience.
So it definitely comes down to just like what's going on in your life at that time as to where you're going to get the most value and best, like what's going to make your life easier and enjoyable and things like that.
Yeah, so good.
Like we said, there's so many things more that we would love to talk to you about. But just to keep today's episode on target for about an hour episode that we usually do. What else should we be thinking about when it comes to money?
Yeah. So once you've got your cash flow plan sorted, you've built up an emergency fund, you've got your non-deductible or your bad debts taken care of, and hopefully you've got a surplus, then the next sort of steps in the financial advice process would be to look at additional insurances, so making sure your life, total and permanent disability, income insurances, all those sorts of things are sorted out. So you then also need to consider your superannuation at that same time because you might have some insurances inside your super, or you might choose to have some of your insurances paid from super because it could be a tax benefit to do so. But then you also need to pay a little bit outside of super too, and that's why you need to make sure you've got your cash flow plan sorted so you can make sure you can fund that. And again, the idea is that if something happens to you and you can't work for a period of time or you can't work ever again, you've got a plan B in place. So you've got some money to support you. I know sometimes people will say, I'll just save the premiums into a bank account. But like for most people, if you're earning like, $50,000 a year, you might need like $1 million to give you 5% to give you $50,000. So are you going to save $1 million? Like, no. So that's why you need to have insurances until you are in a position where you actually don't need to work anymore. Yeah. So insurance and super, and like I mentioned at the start of the episode, superannuation is one of our biggest assets generally outside of our home. So that's why we need to put some emphasis on that. And there's some great tax benefits. But you can also invest outside of super, and that would kind of be like the next step. And, do you invest in an investment property or, ETFs or shares? There's so many different options. And so maybe we can do that as a separate episode.
Wait to do it.
I really want to do that. Very quickly, as the other like micro investing apps like Raise and that, are they worthwhile to get started if you've only got $50 or $100 a week to spend on investing, or would there?
I think
this is a whole nother episode, right?
I think they're great. Back when I started in financial advice, they weren't even a thing.
Yeah.
But it's so great that investing is so much more accessible these days, and you can start off with smaller amounts to help educate yourself. So you might just do like a roundup thing and just get comfortable that, the investments will go up and down, and that's like part of the risk and return trade-off with investing. So I think it's fantastic that those sort of platforms are available. Yeah.
I just do Raise because and that's why I want to do the episode. I tried to learn about investing. I listened to a few podcasts and like a book which was essentially like investing for dummies. Yeah. And it was still just like, it just sounded like all these numbers and letters to me. And I'm like, I
just
can't
the way
understand.
that you like put everything in this episode. I'm the same. Anything with numbers, I'm like, whoa. But I feel like the way you're going to explain investing is going to be a lot easier. And same with super and all of that. I'm really excited for the next episode.
Yeah, I really do try and keep things like simple and just bring it back to like everyday language.
Yeah, I love the way you relate it to like health and fitness.
Yeah, and it's so similar. And obviously for my mind, it's really easy connection when you say things like that. And I'm thinking about how it relates. And obviously I think that will really come across for our listeners as well, because they're used to hearing that from me. Yeah.
So if you could give our listeners one piece of tangible advice that they could begin immediately to improve their financial situation, what would it be?
I'll give a couple of things because I can't just stop at one.
We love it.
Yeah. So one really great tip that I've helped a lot of people with is if you are somebody who loves Afterpay as like a cash flow tool because you're not having to fork out all the money at once, create your own Afterpay account. So set up an account, put like $1,000 in there or whatever it is that you want to put in there. And if you see something you like, you can buy from that Afterpay account that you've set up and then pay yourself back over the installments, like
that's
4 installments
Genius.
or something like that.
So you work out and you go, okay, this is $100. I've taken $100. I've got 4 weeks to put $25 in to get it back to $1,000.
Yes.
Clever.
So
genius.
You're doing your own, and you're still living within your means. You're not borrowing from your future self. So
even though I've done it before, Afterpay now blows my mind. People will be paying, $12.50 a week to buy this $50 thing.
Yeah.
Like, don't you just wait until you have $50?
Nah. I just have the mentality now that like if you don't have the money, you can't afford it. Like you can't have it. Well, that takes people time to get that.
Yeah. The big thing with that is it's creating a disconnection between the spending and then having to repay it.
Yeah.
So you're not feeling the immediate consequence of buying it with all your money now. So you're less like, oh, I'll pay that over 4 installments or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt as much.
It's basically free.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt as much
That's
compared
the disconnect.
to
That's the problem right there.
and that's where we can get into this like cycle and trap. So yeah, like go delete all those emails that get sent to you every day, marketing to you. You need to remember, like, this is not also just you. It's like the whole world that we live in that we're constantly being sold to. So delete all those emails so that you're not getting tempted every day with sales and things like that.
Clever.
Close Afterpay, start your own Afterpay account. Like obviously spending plan, it's so important. So yeah, definitely recommend like getting that sorted. And I guess the other big thing I want to give everybody to take away is that, like I said, there's so much overlap between health and fitness and personal finances. So you really do need to understand like what your goals are and like what sort of life do you want to live so that you can have a big enough why as to why you're doing this.
Work optional. That's the life I want to live.
Yeah, definitely. So I think Atomic Habits is like a popular book here for you. So it's the same with finances. So if you haven't read that book, I recommend reading that or listening to the audio book because it's all about like the habits, the consistency, showing up and like telling yourself, I'm going to be good with money, like giving yourself that, personal affirmation, like you can do this. I've seen plenty of people turn it around. So it's never too late to start.
Oh, that makes me feel good.
I think that it, like as woo-woo as this sounds, like a self-development mindset book about money changed everything for me. And it was just changing.
That doesn't sound woo-woo.
No, but it's all about changing how I think about money.
Yeah.
Like it had nothing to do with how much money I was physically earning. It was my mindset around money.
Yeah.
And like removing like limiting beliefs and
100%.
money being evil and like just thinking about money as energy. It changed so much for me.
I think it's a big thing as well when you are in business and like running you're self-employed, knowing your worth, making sure that you're not like having these blocks so that you're being open and getting that energy. Like I know it is a bit woo-woo, but it's like that energy and like attracting people to you and all of that sort of stuff. I have definitely become more woo-woo as I've gotten older.
Happens to all of us.
Yes, I have become a bit more woo-woo in doing this podcast. It's rubbing off on me. But yeah, no, that all makes so much sense.
So the last question was, how can our listeners find you?
So my main social media platform is Instagram. So it's just at Mazi Wealth. I'm also on LinkedIn. I've got Facebook. Don't really use it too much though.
Our generation does not use Facebook.
I love LinkedIn, but also your Instagram has so many great reels and little like nuggets of advice.
So much to learn.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's a great resource.
Yeah, I enjoy that. I'd like to do more of it. I just get bogged down in my client work. So so Instagram. Otherwise you can find my website as well and reach out that way. And that's probably the main ways.
And we'll pop all that in the show notes.
We sure will. We'll share it on our Insta. This has been amazing. Like I thought it'd be good, but this has been so valuable.
Awesome. I'm so glad to share.
Thank you. Oh my God, I feel very motivated.
Good.
Actually.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Thanks
Oh,
for
thank you.
Thank you so
can't
much.
wait to have you on again. I loved that episode. So good. And I'm sure we can all agree that it was filled with so many nuggets of gold. Oh, clever, Tegan. Everyone knows Tegan writes the sign off. And probably a few wake-up calls for many of us.
If this episode helped you, please be sure to forward it on to one more person that might benefit from Deline's knowledge.
We love talking about these topics. If there is anything you'd like to ask Deline, if we are able to convince her to do a second episode with us, please send it through via Instagram message.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.